It says
Awesome.
FASD is Fetal Alcohol Spectrum Disorder, which you actually talk about in your book. Towards the beginning, you have a little bit about, I think, kind of like why you're recommending what you're recommending for women who are expecting. And part of that discussion is about FASD, which I was very happy to see because I think it's something that's like you see hip, cool, like, I mean, this is super cute, right? You see this or
Thanks.
or FASD. So
I know.
for it to be together is kind of cool.
Yeah, I mean, this was a really great opportunity. So just to kind of, I don't know if you can see all of me, but I'm just going to crouch down here. Here we go. But just to give a little bit of information about my background for anybody tuning in who doesn't already know, before I became a dietitian and pursued that career path, I actually worked in a neuroscience research lab at the University of Delaware for almost 6 years studying an animal model of fetal alcohol spectrum disorders. So during that time, I really got acquainted with the literature, and I went to conferences and interacted with people who were doing all sorts of research in that realm, from preclinical models to human studies. And it just really made me very passionate about the impact of early life exposures and how that can have long-term effects. And like I said, it made me familiar with FASD, which not everybody knows about. Probably most people don't know about it. And then one thing that's becoming more evident to me over time is how little dietitians are trained, and as the importance of nutrition during pregnancy becomes more well studied and people are talking about it more, dietitians are specializing in that realm. It's my hope that people will start paying more attention to this issue, but because it's such a challenging topic and one that's, very divisive and personal and hard to deliver accurate information without making people feel shameful or judged. It's a very tricky space to be in, as I'm sure you can relate to. So to go back to the book, my really good friend, Diana Lacalzi, who's actually in the middle of a cross-country move.
Yeah, I've been following that. It's very exciting.
So she and I were in Boston together. We went to Tufts for grad school, and that's how we met. She was a year ahead of me in the process to becoming a dietitian. And through, long story short, she had a connection that came to her with this idea for a mocktail recipe book. And they basically came to her and they were like, well, who do you think should write this? Should a dietitian write this or an OB-GYN? And Diana was like, well, of course, this is something that falls under the expertise of a dietitian. And she decided that she wanted to do it. And she knew about my interests and my background. So she asked me to be a part of the project. So for me, it was just kind of an opportunity, well, really for both of us, that fell into our laps. But it was just so cool when I was invited to be on this project with her, because it was just such an awesome merger of what I had done before I became a dietitian and then applying my training as a dietitian and my passion for nutrition into something that was like a fun way to deliver some very heavy and important information to people.
Yeah, no, and it is like, it's super cute. This was today's recipe. Like, it looks like yes, I would like to make that.
Hopefully approachable.
There are pages of very, so if you have the book, FASD is on page 20. Just the acronym jumped out at me. And if you're just joining us for this cool thing because you want to make a mocktail, which I totally get, FASD is Fetal Alcohol Spectrum Disorder, which is the most common form of developmental disabilities affecting 5% of the population in the U.S. And it is, we're looking at a very high number of women that are having alcohol-exposed pregnancies, which we'll talk about in a minute. And so not every woman that has an alcohol-exposed pregnancy is necessarily going to have a child with FASD, but what it could look like long-term, it's just a risk factor. What it could look like long-term is a lot of people, like, this is what I say flippantly, which I don't know, maybe it's not okay, but it's like ADHD and autism, like, had a baby. Like, we have, like, so many of the symptoms of autism and so many symptoms of ADHD, and they're often misdiagnosed as one or the other.
Right.
And so we're looking at, we have a lot of hyperactivity. Maybe our social skills aren't quite what we're expecting. Like, maturity, dysmaturity would be the difference between developmental and chronological age. We're going to have, of course, executive functioning, which is characteristic of both autism and ADHD. So we definitely see that a lot as well. We think that individuals with FASD always have cognitive challenges, but actually 70% of people on the spectrum have IQs of higher than 70. Yeah. So a lot of times people are like our bias says, no, this individual couldn't have FASD, which is like not scientifically accurate. So it kind of is a barrier for us being able to have this conversation.
That was a statistic that I didn't know about either, because that was always something that I kind of assumed, at least for people that qualified for FAS. So I'm even learning, by following you and other people that are a little bit more directly in the field and dealing with, children and reading about the more current studies. I'm kind of getting back into it, but it blows my mind.
We're pulling you in.
Yeah, I know.
So they're saying that less than 10% of individuals on the spectrum have the facial features. And all the facial features being present are required for an FAS diagnosis. And we've kind of historically thought like FAS is the worst diagnosis, and so that's the kids with the most serious challenges. It's like kind of our perceived, but what they're finding with the studies is that that's not necessarily true. It's just that alcohol exposure happened during that point in pregnancy. That's all that's really telling you.
Because the facial changes are happening if a child is exposed earlier in pregnancy.
Yes. And so that's a first trimester change, whereas the third trimester is when the brain is really growing and it's expanding into the skull, so it's creating the brain folds, and then that's where we see more of the surface area developing that would lead to cognition. So so we could drink at different times and not have one and have the other, have both or neither. It's like it's a very complicated thing, and because it's not an either or, a lot of times it's hard to diagnose and it's hard to have a conversation about it. So some of the risk factors, and I'm going to tell you, and then you're like you have a degree in these types of things. So some of the risk factors are so maternal genetics are one thing. So like we can't just say, oh well, I drank when I was pregnant, and my kid's fine, so your kid will be fine too, because like each woman is genetically different. And then the fetal genetics are different. So they've done twin studies where one twin will have significant effects and then not be affected differently, or one have effects and one not really qualify at all, which is just mind-blowing in and of itself. But then, of course, nutrition plays a part, stress, epigenetic changes, all of those things. So your book obviously addresses we don't want to put ourselves in the risk factor portion of having an alcohol-exposed pregnancy even very early on. But it also they're healthy recipes. So you're meeting the health need also, which I have never even tried to get pregnant, so I don't know really much about what those rules are, but they look yummy anyways for like anyone. So I'm excited.
Well, yeah, and we always advertise the book that way. It's not just for, women who are trying to get pregnant. It's just for people who want an alternative to alcohol that isn't loaded with like soda and juice and sugar. Because I know personally, I don't order cocktails, I'll be honest. That's just like not what I get at a bar. I will get, not right now because of Mocktail month, obviously, but I tend to gravitate towards wine and beer. And the main reason for that is because for me, cocktails are usually way too sugary. And I've had experiences where I've had mocktails and cocktails and I just feel outright jittery after. And I can tell my blood sugars are getting really whacked out because that's not how I normally eat. So for us, for Diana and me, it was also about just creating drinks that we would enjoy and that, we felt were like a positive addition to somebody's, meal or a social interaction. So you can not only not have alcohol and have fun, but you can also do it in a way that supports your health.
Yeah, I love that, because I actually have hypoglycemia, so I can't have too much sugar. So I too, I do not enjoy the taste of wine or beer, and so
it's not for everyone.
Always have a cocktail in the days when I used to drink, but now I'm taking medicine that I can't drink. So I'm like, well, I just won't. And so I've never really, until I started following you guys, and especially when you started doing Mocktail months, which is happening now. I was like, oh, there are like other things to do. So like I knew you had this book, but I hadn't really thought about it. I'm just thinking like it's juice and something. So this is really kind of a different perspective on it. So I enjoy that. And we have already had the, what is it called? The Mojito?
Yeah, the Mojito.
Yes.
They all have fun names.
Exactly like a mojito. I was like super shocked. My husband got the ingredients and made it, and I haven't had them mojito, and I'm going to try to call it the wrong thing. I haven't had a mojito in a long time because of this. And I was like, oh my gosh, like how do you do that with like not, how does it taste exactly? I mean, even the bite, which is something you talked about, I think when you guys were doing your dual live talking about Mocktail month, is that some of the substitutions you guys use for the bite of alcohol.
So in that particular case, we used apple cider vinegar. That was kind of, I thought it was like a really cool discovery because I don't remember how we thought of that idea, but it turns out we're not the only people who came up with that. And also it's, like shrubs are becoming really popular, and the base of a shrub is vinegar. So it kind of makes sense. So I can't really remember if our intuition just kind of went in that direction. We were like, oh, why don't we just put a little pop of that in there and see how it tastes, or if I read about it or, you know, got the idea from the shrubs. But, you know, we're all kind of like going in the same direction, everybody in the mocktail world. So it was kind of fun to be in line with that. But yeah, the mojito was like one of the first drinks when we were recipe testing. I was like, we're on to something. Like we can do this. So
yeah, and you guys are doing another book too? Is that right?
Yeah, I can't say too much about it right now, but we are releasing another mocktail book in 2021. So stay tuned for that.
That's very exciting.
Yeah.
Well, we need to get started on our ingredients. So
sure.
I have the things I need.
Okay.
Now I do. So
awesome.
You're going to give me directions and I'm going to follow along.
Cool. Are you making a single serving or because all of the drinks in Drinky for Two are for two because it's called Drinky for Two. So I can either give you the directions for the single serving or the double serving.
Yeah, go ahead and give me the single serving, yeah.
Okay. I'm doing the single serving as well. So this one is super easy because most of our drinks, we tried to make them as easy as possible because, during pregnancy, the last thing you need is more work, making simple syrups. Who wants to waste any time on that? So this is just throwing everything in a blender. This is our pina colada. So I have a cup of frozen pineapple in my bowl. So I'm just going to go ahead and put that in my blender thing. Hopefully you can see some of this happening, but it's pretty intuitive. All right, so we got the pineapple. So then, of course, in a pina colada, you got the pineapple, and then you've got the coconut flavor, right? So in this particular recipe, we actually use two different kinds of coconut milk, which we give recommendations if you can't find one of the kinds of coconut milk, you can easily substitute it. Like, for example, the carton coconut milk, that tends to be a more thinned out version of like the canned coconut milk. So if you just couldn't find that, you could either use more of the canned coconut milk and just thin it out a little bit with coconut water, or you could substitute for almond milk or soy milk and it just won't have as much of the coconut flavor. When I went to the grocery store, all I could find was like the almond coconut milk. So this is going to be, I don't know, some portion almond milk. That's fine. Doesn't really matter. We're flexible. So in addition to the 1 cup of the frozen pineapple, we're also going to add half a cup of the unsweetened coconut milk from the carton, or like I said, almond, whatever non-dairy milk or dairy milk, if that's your preference. So that's going in. And then in my measuring cup here, I also went ahead and added my canned coconut milk. So that's like the thicker consistency. It's not as watered down as the carton coconut milk. And for this particular recipe, I choose the full fat version. If you want to use the light version, that's totally fine. It's up to you. So that's just going to be 2 tablespoons into the blender cup. And then this is like the really fun ingredient and one of the things that makes our drinks kind of unique. Not unique if you're a dietitian and you put this in your smoothies all the time, but we actually add frozen cauliflower to our smoothies. It doesn't taste like anything, and you're adding fiber and nutrients, and it adds creaminess too. Fun fact, I actually have an allergy to latex, and that affects my ability to eat certain kinds of fruit, including banana. So I can't put, I can't put banana in my smoothies. So actually the cauliflower is kind of a fun trick for making things a little bit creamier. You don't have to do that, but it's just a great way to add nutrients. So why wouldn't you? It's not going to add any flavor. And then finally, we're just going to do a squeeze of lime juice. I like a lot of lime, so I'm just gonna squeeze a good amount in there. Okay, so unfortunately, I'm not seeing a way to mute myself.
Sorry guys,
so,
it's gonna be like really loud in a second.
Yeah, my blender is obnoxious, so I apologize to everybody, and hopefully my husband isn't startled. He's like in the other room. He always makes me let him know when I'm gonna blend. I may try to let him know. I'm gonna blend. Hopefully he heard that, okay? Okay, cool. So I think mine's good.
I need to add a little bit more liquid.
Yeah, I was going to say something about that. It's really hard when you're developing recipes for blended drinks because every blender is slightly different. So yeah, you may need to add more or less. My ingredients also sat out for a little bit, so my pineapple was already a little bit less frozen.
Got it.
Perfect. And there you go. So you can serve this with a maraschino cherry. I went to Target yesterday with the intention of getting that and then forgot, so.
It's like, this lady, I got my mojito the other day at the place I tagged you in, and they put cherries that were like dark colored.
Oh yeah.
I don't know what they were, but they were so good.
They might be marinated, they must be marinated in something different than a maraschino cherry.
Them something, and I was like, I like the thing, whatever you gave me. I should have written it out, but I support it.
Awesome. Yeah, they looked good. I like ones like that. Maraschino cherries were like good at one point in my life, but I'm not the biggest fan of them anymore. But cheers.
Yes, that's so good. And this is like beach vacation, which is what we all need right now.
Oh, I know. Yeah, we have a pool over there. It would be nice to go out there, but
You sound so sad.
no,
Well,
we're only allowed to go on certain days, so.
Yes, I am going to save this, and she'll be able to save it also. What's also interesting to note is that we at one point lived in the same area, but did not know that we lived in the same area.
I know, what a small world.
So she used to live in the Cincinnati area. That's where I live now. And I did not know her when she lived here, but she did. Oh. And yeah, so that's really cool. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining us. Hope we put out some information about FASD and also that there are cool, healthy, hip alternatives that make you feel good. And I don't think I'm going to be quite as good as our friend Candace, who does her Mocktail Mondays. I'm not nearly that level of organized quite yet, but
yeah, she does a good job.
Fun. Yes,
yeah.
It's very beautiful. Well, thank you so much for joining me, and we will share it on our profile so that you guys can watch this again later.